Friends, fellow citizens, this is the birthday of your national independence. This celebration marks the beginning of another year of your national life and reminds you that America is now 76 years old. 76 is but a mere speck in the life of a nation. You are only in the beginning of your national career. There is hope and thought that America is still young. Fellow citizens, 76 years ago, the people of this country were British subjects. Your fathers esteemed the English government as the home government. Feeling themselves unjustly treated by the home government, your fathers earnestly sought redress. They petitioned and remonstrated. This, however, did not answer the purpose. Yet, they persevered. Citizens, your fathers succeeded, and today you reap the fruits of their success. The freedom gained is yours, and you may celebrate this anniversary. Fellow citizens, allow me to ask why I am called upon to speak here today. What have I or those I represent to do with your national independence? Are the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice embodied in that Declaration of Independence extended to us? I am not included within the pale of this glorious anniversary. The rich inheritance of justice, liberty, prosperity, and independence bequeathed by your fathers is shared by you, not by me. This 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice. I must mourn. Fellow citizens, my subject then is American slavery. I shall see this day from the slave's point of view. What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I'll answer. A day that reveals to him more than all other days in the year the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham. Your boasted liberty an unholy license. Your national greatness, swelling vanity. Your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless. Your denunciation of tyrants, brass-fronted impudence. Your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery. Your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings, with all your religious parade and solemnity are to him mere bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy. A thin veil to cover up crimes which would disgrace a nation of savages. There is not a nation on earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are those of the people in these United States at this very hour. Behold the practical operations of the internal slave trade, the American slave trade, sustained by American politics and American religion. Here you will see men and women reared like swine for the market. You know what is a swine drover. I will show you a man drover. They perambulate the country and crowd the highways and nations with droves of human stock. You will see one of these human flesh jobbers, armed with pistol, whip, and bowie knife, driving a company of 100 men, women, and children from the Potomac to the slave market to New Orleans. Mark the sad procession as it moves wearily along, and the inhuman wretch who drives them. Hear his savage yells and his blood-chilling oaths as he hurries his affrighted captives. There you see an old man with locks thin and gray. Cast one glance, if you please, upon the young mother whose shoulders are scorched from the sun. Her briny tears falling on the brow of the babe in her arms. See too that girl of 13 weeping. Yes, weeping as she thinks the mother from which she has been torn from. The droves move tardily. Heat and sorrow have nearly consumed their strength. Suddenly you hear a quick snap, like a discharge of a rifle. The fetters clink and the chain rattles simultaneously. Your ears are saluted with a scream that seems to have torn its way to the center of your soul. The crack you heard was the sound of a slave whip. The scream you heard was from the woman you saw with the babe. Her speed had faltered under the weight of her child and her chains. That gash on her shoulder tells her to move on. Now follow the drove to New Orleans. Attend the auction. See the men examined like horses. See the forms of women rudely and brutally exposed to the shocking gaze of the American slave buyers. See this drove sold and separated forever. And never forget the deep, sad sobs that arose from the scattered multitude. Tell me, citizens, tell me where, under the sun, you can witness a spectacle more fiendish and shocking. Yet this is but a glance at the American slave trade as it exists at this very moment in the ruling part of these United States. But a still more inhuman state of things remains to be presented. By an act of American Congress not yet 2 years old, slavery has been nationalized in its most horrible and revolting form. By that act, Mason and Dixon line has been obliterated. The power to hold, hunt, and sell men, women, and children remain no longer a mere state institution, but is now an institution of the whole United States. By that most foul and fiendish of all human decrees, the liberty and persons of every man are put in peril. Your broad Republican domain is hunting ground for the men, not for thieves and robbers, enemies of society, but for men guilty of no crime. For black men, there are neither law, justice, humanity, not religion. The freedom slave law makes mercy to them a crime and bribes the judge who tries them. An American judge, let me know if you know this, an American judge gets $10 for every victim he co-signs to slavery. And five for everyone he fails to do so. The minister of American justice is bound by the law to hear but one side. And that one side is the side of the oppressor. Now let this damning fact be perpetually told. Let it be thundered around the world that in tyrant killing, king hating, people loving, democratic, Christian America, the seats of justice are filled with judges who hold their office under an open and palpable bribe. I take this law to be one of the grossest infringements of Christian liberty. And if the churches and ministers of our country were not stupidly blind and most wickedly indifferent, they too would so regret it. At this very moment, they are thanking God for the enjoyment of civil and religious liberty. They are utterly silent in respect to a law which robs religion of its chief significance. It makes it utterly worthless to the world lying in wickedness. The fact that the church of our country, with fractional exceptions, does not esteem the fugitive slave law as a declaration of war against religion liberty implies that the church regards religion simply as an empty ceremony and not a vital principle requiring active benevolence, justice, love, goodwill towards man. A worship that can be conducted by persons who refuse to give shelter to the houseless, bread to the hungry, clothing to the naked, and who enjoys obedience to a law forbidding these acts of mercy is a curse and not a blessing to mankind. But the church of this country is not only indifferent to the wrongs of a slave, it actually takes the side of the oppressor. It has made itself the bulwark of American slavery. It has taught that man may be a slave, that the relation of master and slave is ordained by God, that to send back an escaped bondsman to his master is a duty to all those who follow our Lord Jesus Christ. And this horrible blasphemy is palmed off upon the world of Christianity. These ministers strip the love of God of its beauty and leaves the throng of religion a huge, horrible, repulsive form, which divides mankind into two classes, tyrants and slaves, which says to the man in chains, stay there, and to the oppressor, oppress on. In the language of Isaiah, the American church might be well addressed. Your hands are full of blood. Cease to do evil. Learn to do well. Seek judgment. Relieve the oppressed. Judge the fatherless. Plead for the widow. In prosecuting the anti-slavery enterprise, we've been asked to spare the church. But how, we ask, could such a thing be done? We are met on the thresholds of our efforts for the redemption of the slave by the church and the ministry of the country in battle arrayed against us, and we are compelled to fight or flee. From what quarter, I beg to know, has proceeded a fire so deadly upon our ranks during the last 2 years than the northern pulpits? In speaking of the American church, however, let it be distinctively understood that I mean the great mass of religious organizations of our land. There are exceptions, and I thank God that they are. You declare before the world that you hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and are endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, and that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and yet you hold securely in a bondage which, according to your own Thomas Jefferson, is worse than ages of that which your fathers rose in rebellion to oppose. A seventh part of the inhabitants of your country. Fellow citizens, I will not enlarge further on your national inconsistencies. The existence of slavery in this country brands your republicanism as a sham, your humanity as a base pretense, and your Christianity as a lie. It destroys your moral power abroad. It corrupts your politicians at home. It shapes the foundation of religion. It makes your name a hissing and a byword to a mocking earth. It is the antagonistic force in your government. It is the only thing that seriously disturbs and endangers your union. It fetters your progress. It is the enemy of improvement, the deadly foe of education. It fosters pride. It breeds insolence. It promotes vice. It shelters crime. It is a curse to the earth that supports it, and yet, you cling to it as if it were a sheet anchored of all your hopes. Oh, be warned, be warned. A horrible reptile is coiled up in the nation's bosom. The venomous creature is nursing at the tender breast of your youthful republic. For the love of God, tear away and flee from your hideous monster, and let the weight of 20 million crush and destroy it forever. But it is answered in reply to all this that precisely what I have now denounced is that the right to hold and to hunt slaves is a part of that Constitution framed by your illustrious fathers of this republic. And instead of being the honest men I have before declared them to be, they were the very impostors that ever practiced on mankind. But I differ from those who charge this baseness of the framers of the Constitution of the United States. It is slander upon their memory, at least so I believe. Fellow citizens, there is no matter in respect to which the people of the North have allowed themselves to be so ruinously imposed upon, and that the instrument I hold there is neither warrant, license, nor sanction of the hateful thing, but interpret it as it ought to be interpreted. The Constitution is a glorious and liberty document. Read its preamble. Consider its purposes. Is slavery among them? No. Or is it in the temple? No. It is neither. Let me ask, if the Constitution were intended to be a slave-holding instrument, why neither slavery, nor slave-hold, nor slave can anywhere be found in it? What would be thought of an instrument drawn up for the purpose of entitling the city of Rochester to a tract of land in which no mention of land was in it? Now, there are certain rules of interpretation for the proper understanding of a legal document. The rules are well established. They are plain, common sense rules, such as you and I or any of us can understand and apply without having passed in years of law. I hold that every American citizen has the right to form an opinion of the Constitution and to propagate that opinion and use all honorable means to make his opinion a prevailing one. Now take the Constitution according to its plain reading, and I defy the presentation of a single pro-slavery clause in it. Now, on the other hand, it will be found to contain principles and purposes entirely hostile to the existence of slavery. Now, allow me to say, in conclusion, notwithstanding the dark picture I have this day presented of the state of the nation, I do not despair of this country. There are forces in operation which must inevitably work downfall of slavery. The arm of the Lord is not shortened, and the doom of slavery is certain. I therefore leave off where I began, with hope. But a change has now come over the affairs of mankind. Oceans no longer divide, but link nations together. From Boston to London is now a holiday excursion. Space is comparatively annihilated. Thoughts expressed on one side of the Atlantic are distinctly heard on the other. No abuse, no outrage, whether in taste, sport, or avarice, can now hide itself from the all-pervading light. Africa must rise and put on her unwoven garment. Ethiopia shall stretch out her hands until God. In the fervent aspiration of William Lloyd Garrison, I say, and let every heart join in saying it, God speed the year of Jubilee the whole world over.